What is a supernatural event that happened in your life that just cannot be explained? When I was 12, I woke up with a start at 2:30 in the morning. I wasn't dreaming and didn't know why I woke up. My parents told me the next morning that my grandfather had had a heart attack and went for emergency surgery. He died at 2:30 in the morning. When my grandfather died, my parents were in charge of cleaning out his old house. I ended up helping out a couple of times in the night. Before we were finished, I had a dream about my grandfather in his basement pointing at a spot behind the staircase. It was so vivid and real that I had to tell everyone about it. The next and final day of cleaning, we went to the spot I was talking about. My dad ended up pulling back some old wood paneling and found a bunch of old photographs of when my grandparents first moved into the house. I still get goosebumps when I think about it, and have them now while typing. I've had a couple of instances of very unusually vivid dreams of a loved one that I lost. I can't explain why the dream was so vivid, affected me so much, and seemed to send such an important message. Maybe it was just coincidence, or maybe it means something. I don't know, but this is a really cool story. So when I was younger, my dad died. My mom remarried and had 2 kids. I was moved into the basement, unfinished basement. I didn't think anything of it since I was 10. I had a sheet blocking my area from the laundry area. It had bare concrete walls, wood beams and piping across the ceiling and cement flooring. Used the heater and dehumidifier cause it was cold and humid. When I used the heater, my parents would make my sheeted area around my bed so it would heat up the space quicker. Parents didn't allow any of my friends over, and my brother and sister weren't allowed in my room. Distant family members also never stayed over, and when we had family gathering, I was told to go into the guest room instead of my room while they were there. I thought, cool, I have a huge room and no one can mess it up. My family would go on vacations yearly without me from when I was 12 till I was 18. I was the dog and house watcher. During one of those vacations when I was 17, I invited a friend come over. They pointed out how fucked up it was that there were bedrooms fully furnished with TVs for my brother and sister, a guest room fully furnished as well with a TV, and how I was in the basement with sheets for walls and bathroom mats on the floor. I completely dismissed it cause it was normal to me. It was until I was 20 that I found out that the family trips that I didn't go on were paid for with money that I was getting from my dad passing away. I'm sure I got some of the money in food and clothes and whatever I needed, but it's got me pretty fucked up cause my brother and sister don't have any memory of it, and when I talk about it they always back my parents by saying we were raised right and I opted out of vacations. They also thought the guest room was my room. Add on, I just wanted to thank everyone for being so kind and welcoming with your thoughts. There is a lot, and this whole day has been way more emotional than I could have ever expected. I'm trying my best to get back to everyone, and if I miss you, it was an honest mistake. Again, thank you everyone, you all deserve the world. Also, if any of you need someone to talk to, my door is always open. Man, I'm so sorry this happened to you, and I'm sorry to say this, but your mother is a disgrace. It's clear to see what happened here, and it's probably the saddest thing I have read in this thread. I had something similar happen to me when I was young, but included my stepdad beating me. I sincerely hope you're doing good now and making the most of your life. I'm off to hug my kids. I had a friend in HS. We're still friends today actually. His mom was a hoarder. There were little pathways throughout the house, but it was filled, from floor to ceiling, with junk. In the hallway to the bedrooms, she had stacked every newspaper she ever got. They were tied up in bundles. When you walked in that hallway, he would caution to not touch the papers because if a row fell, it would take a couple hours to dig yourself out. I came here to comment about roaches, but I got lost reading replies. Many moons ago, My family visited some relatives and all of us kids slept over on the floor. I woke up to something crawling on me and brushed it off and tried to get back to sleep. The next morning when we had cereal for breakfast, I finally saw what had been crawling on me. Roaches. Roaches everywhere. When they opened the cabinet, there's roaches. Grabbed a bowl and turned it upside on the way to the table. There's roaches. Poured cereal. There's roaches. Got a spoon. There's roaches. My parents told me later that is just how they are, but we didn't visit again. I still think about that trip. I babysat for a family on occasion and the kids would always ask for a cool cup and I had no clue what it was. They asked for them constantly but were too little to really describe them enough for me to understand. I mentioned it to the mom in passing one day and she started laughing and cut the tops off of some bell peppers and took out the seeds and then filled the peppers with tap water. The kids went nuts over them like they were treats. It was really weird to me that drinking water out of bell peppers was a thing to beg for on the regular. My family were very comfortable and my mom always babysat lots of kids from around the neighborhood. Basically her place was just where the kids hung out. Once there was an emergency with my dad and my mom really needed somebody to watch me overnight and I wound up with one of the families that she babysat for. They were really nice people and I was close friends with their kids obviously because they were at my house every day. It was a new experience though. This was the first time I'd ever seen people living in real poverty. I was kind about it and I didn't say anything. But parts of it were a real shock to me. The toilet didn't work, but they had just continued to use it to the point that it was piled up to the seat. We had to unscrew the light bulb to turn off the lights because the switch would shock you if you touched it. I felt really bad for them. It was just a real eye-opener for me as a kid and it gave me a much better understanding of exactly why my mom babysat and fed all those kids. Had a friend whose family lived on a huge property and kept cows for the property tax exemption. Not odd. He told me to come by and get some purple ringers he collected for me. Invited me in to meet his parents and I swear to God, there was a full-size cow chilling on one of their couches in the living room. That sight was way more wild than any of the hallucinations later experienced. Really nice people though lol. Growing up we had some goats and land but no cows. My brother decided to go to the livestock auction with one of his friends and saw a baby cow being sold for meat. I guess he just couldn't stand the thought of this poor little cow being sold to be eaten so he won the auction for it, walked it home somehow, didn't put it in the pasture, nor the backyard, but inside the house instead. My mom came home from work and was like, "Excuse me everyone, why is there a cow in the hallway?" How he got in so much trouble. Loved that cow though. He thought he was a goat. When I was younger I was best friends with two brothers from Jamaica. One of the days they asked me to stay over so we could play some Atari after we finished playing outside. We came home 12 minutes after their curfew so their dad, who was extremely calm, told us to sit in the living room. I sat in there with my two friends and they were super quiet, which was a bit weird until their dad walked in with a belt and beat the living shit out of them. I shit myself, not literally, because I thought I was in for a beating but he didn't hit me, which was a huge relief. After the beating their dad, asked if I would like some carrot juice while my friends just went back to normal and set up their Atari like nothing happened. I was sat on the sofa wondering what the fuck just went on. I had a buddy in college who was a very anxious and nervous person. He had a first date with a girl from class coming up and he was panicking, so we told him that he should go ham clean the pipes before the date to help ease his nerves, and come to find out that this 20-year-old dude had never masturbated before, and basically he tried once, but couldn't get the hang of it and was embarrassed and uncomfortable so he never tried again. He was saying that maybe he was doing it wrong, so we asked him how he did it and he described something along the lines of making a kind of claw with his hand and trying to fuck his fingertips, like this, and we're like, "Well, there's your problem," and explained the more standard grip. He left after a bit because I think he was a bit embarrassed and stuff. Then like an hour later he comes back. He walks in with the swagger and attitude that I have never seen before, the most relaxed face and a tiny smirk on his lips, and we all instantly knew that he had released years and years of built-up tension and pressure. From then on, the guy was chill off and actually wound up dating that girl from class for several months. Shit was wild. My GF and her little brother were staying at a sort of foster home that was absolutely filthy. They knew it was, but weren't going to complain about it since it was still better than their last situation. But the parents there had 2 little boys of their own, and it's their normal. I feel bad that those boys will either realize their home is disgusting and never invite anyone over, or have someone over who then embarrasses them or doesn't want to be their friend anymore because of it. Slept over at a friend's when I was around 10. She was the only girl in her family, and had 5 brothers, whose ages ranged from like 4 to 15. Everything about my friend's sleeping situation was normal, but her brother's room was bizarre. They shared one big room, with 3 bunk beds, each mattress a fitted sheet, a pillow, and nothing else. No top sheets, no blankets, no comforters. Also, the boys didn't have pajamas. They all just slept in the clothes they had worn that day, with their shirts tucked into their pants, and belts on, too. The room didn't have a door, and neither did their connected bathroom or their closets. Turns out they were fundamentalist Christians, and the boys' setup was meant to prevent masturbation. In 6th grade, my first ever sleepover, I went to the bathroom and came out to him blasting porn in the living room, and I had never seen porn before. We watch it for like 10 minutes and he says, "I'm so horny, I gotta jack off, bro." Then he started cranking his dick right there in front of me and I was shocked. The video was some fat dude cocking another guy and making him cry. I'll never forget that. My house, but looking back it's unusual. My dad was a doctor and it was not uncommon for him to take a patient's blood on the way home and store it in the fridge next to the orange juice overnight, then take it to work the next morning. Can't do that these days of course, but the 70s was pretty wild. Was sleeping over at a friend's house in 6th grade. 3 p.m. we show up to her house after school. We walked into her apartment to find her mom half-dressed, passed out drunk and sprawled out with her head on the floor, one arm twisted weirdly so it somehow was resting on the coffee table, and her legs on the couch. TV was on and blaring. Didn't even notice our arrival. I had zero experience with this kind of thing, and although I could tell my friend was embarrassed, I didn't understand the full implications or really what was happening. I pretty much just thought it was an odd place for a nap, which is how I explained it to my parents later when I commented on how odd it was to be napping there instead of in bed. I might have even asked them if they would let me sleep on the couch and watch TV too. Bless my parents for immediately understanding the situation but not making a scene and not spoiling my naivete or ever embarrassing my friend in any way. My family is pretty good at being subtle, for better or worse. However, that was absolutely the last time I stayed at her house. All sleepovers with that particular friend were at my house from then on, but it was a casual coincidence from my part. I didn't even notice that subtle change for a couple of years. Looking back, I think my friend really appreciated it though. We're still friends and she has kids of her own and she's doing great, is a doctor. But her mom still has the same alcohol struggles and is very in your face about it even now as she was then. One of the first times I met my husband's family, I was over at their house and husband gestured for me to sit down and be comfortable. Their house was really very cluttered, not quite hoarder cluttered, but close. They had a couple of couches facing each other and then some other chairs. Not knowing the rules, I sat on one of the couches, which had a lot of stuffed teddy bears on it. OMG, You would think I had sat down on live bears. There were probably 20-30 small, medium stuffed bears on this couch. Husband's mother and twin brother both visibly reacted as if I had damaged the bears. Not antique bears either. That was when I was told that the couch was for the bears, and only for the bears, and that no one was allowed to sit on the bears' couch, just the bears. The bears all had little beaded necklaces with their names on them to tell them apart because they were all the same brand and style. Not a friend's house, but similar situation. My mom was dating a local radio host and things were getting kinda serious. I was 6 at the time. She took me and my sister to his house to meet him and his son, who was my age. He had a full-blown Furby collection and all of them were situated so they were staring at the front door. Those things have never not been creepy, and more doesn't make it better. Anyway, he told us the kids had to play in the basement and locked us down there with his son. It wasn't bad. The basement wasn't fancy, but we popped Mighty Joe Young in the VCR and watched it. I'm pretty sure he locked the door so we wouldn't interrupt him while he tried to get in my mom's pants, but it was weird enough that I never forgot about it. No one had ever locked me anywhere before that. His son didn't seem to think anything of it though. Ed, the father, was the one with the Furby collection. They were lined up on a ledge by the stairs and he got mad when I tried to touch one. Kinda the opposite. I had a friend over when my dad went on a tirade screaming and yelling at my brother and I. We thought it was normal to have emotionally abusive parents. After that friend never came over again. I went to his house, and his parents seemed a bit more interested in me. By the time we graduated high school, I got my diploma and walked over to hug his parents before my own at the ceremony. I remember asking my mom how come she didn't like me like my friends' moms liked their girls. I told her they always hugged and talked to each other and laughed, and said I love you multiple times throughout the day. I was 10. My mom rolled her eyes at me and went to her room. I tried to be close to her until I was about 16. I finally realized she didn't give a shit about being close to me. She was very affectionate and close to my brothers and little sister. After she realized I didn't care anymore, she started to make an effort. I'm extremely lucky for my dad though. He was there for me for anything and everything. Later on I realized she was extremely jealous and hated that my dad doted on me. Thanks Reddit. Even if no one reads this, it was therapeutic typing it out and just getting it out there. Ed, thank you for the gold, kind stranger. My first one. All of you that responded to this comment, thank you. It means a lot. 3. Not at my friend's house, but we were 15-year-olds and went for a walk to her mom's friend's house to get her some smokes. We walked into the house and the 2-year-old was covering themselves in margarine. The floor was covered in roaches, animal poop, used nappies, diapers, and rubbish. There was peanut butter on the walls and kitchen table. It was so incredibly sad to see dirty and disheveled kids living in that. The weirdest part was seeing the toddler smearing margarine in their hair, and no one caring. The rest was disgusting, but I'd seen that kind of living before. Never the complete indifference towards a baby though. Awful. I have many, but here's the first that popped in my head. I was driving home from work after picking up my baby late at night. Not many cars around out on the country roads. The one stoplight out there was red for me, so I stop. It turns green and have a sudden voice or thought or whatever in my head saying don't go yet. Nothing is coming. I'm still sitting at the green light. Right as I let off the brake, a semi comes flying through his red light. I was shook. It's likely you're aware of the semi coming at some level, the sound it makes, maybe a shadow, or if you could see it in the corner of your eye, etc. And that thought was basically your intuition stopping you. It's a similar idea to when people feel someone watching them. We've all had that moment where we get that feeling and then look up and sure enough someone is looking right at us. It isn't the sixth sense, You actually noticed at some point through conventional means at a subconscious level and then eventually became consciously aware. They've tested this by having people sit in front of one-way mirrors and then ask them if they feel they are being watched. When a potential observer is completely screened from view and hearing, people who are being watched do no better than random chance at guessing whether they were being watched or not. Very minor. But I still go what the fuck, when I remember when I was a kid, around 6, I lived in a very arid area, and a wide field of red dirt was between my house and my buds. Every day, walking over there, when I got about halfway across, I'd pick up a dirt clod or a small rock, and toss it behind me over my shoulder. About 10 seconds later, it would come flying back over my head and land in front of me. I'd just grin and keep walking. I remember this really distinctly, even trying to replicate it later in childhood after I'd moved away, and being sad that it didn't work anymore. Didn't question it as a kid, but looking back, just really weird. Also, my job site is haunted, but this seems stranger.